slow up. No, I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you
Everybody, welcome back. I know a lot of you out there are feeling like the world's economy is kind of spinning out of control right now.
Well, yeah, it's definitely, there are some big changes happening, that's for sure.
Exactly. And we're going to break it all down for you today.
That's right.
We're going to cover everything from crazy inflation to the, digital currency craze that's going on. Oh, and of course, we can't forget about the job market. Feels like it's on a trampoline, up and down, up and down.
Absolutely. And we're even going to look beyond our borders. We're talking global trade, folks.
Yeah.
What's happening out there and how's it affecting us right here at home?
Because that's what this deep dive is all about, right?
Yeah.
Giving you the knowledge, the tools to not just understand this stuff, but to actually use it to your advantage.
Exactly. We're not just explaining it. We're going to equip you to thrive in this changing world.
Exactly. All right, so let's jump right in. First up, let's talk about this inflation thing, because I swear, every time I go to the grocery store, I feel like I'm getting less and less for my money.
Yeah, well, you're not imagining things. Inflation is definitely hitting everyone's wallets pretty hard. And it's kind of a global phenomenon, but it's not affecting every country the same way, which is interesting.
Okay, so explain that. Why is it hitting some places harder than others?
Yeah.
And, what are central banks doing about all of this?
Well, a lot of central banks, like the Federal Reserve in the U.S., they're raising interest rates. The thinking is if borrowing money gets more expensive, people will spend less, businesses will slow down their investing, and that'll hopefully cool down the economy and bring prices back down.
So is it working?
Well, the jury's still out on that one. Some economists say, yeah, it's starting to have an effect. Others are worried that, these rate hikes could actually trigger a recession. It's a delicate balancing act, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this inflation problem, and then on top of that, we have this whole digital currency explosion happening. Bitcoin, Ethereum, stable coins, even governments are getting in on the action with their own digital currencies, these CBDCs. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of excited at the potential here, but it also feels like the Wild West out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a mixed bag. I mean, the potential is huge. Think about it. Faster transactions, lower fees, especially for international payments, and for people who don't have access to traditional banking, in developing countries, for example, it could be a real game changer.
Right.
But, and this is a big but, there are also some real risks. I mean, we've seen how volatile cryptocurrencies can be, and then there are questions about security, regulation, all that.
Well, and what about El Salvador? They actually made Bitcoin legal tender, right? I mean, that was a pretty bold move. How'd that turn out?
Yeah, it was a big experiment. I mean, their goal was to boost their economy, attract investment, make it easier for people to send money back home from abroad.
Right.
But it's been a bumpy road, honestly. Adoption has been slower than they hoped. The volatility of Gitcoin has caused some problems. So, yeah, it's a real-world example of the challenges of actually implementing these things on a national scale.
Yeah. So, big potential, but a lot of unknowns still.
Yeah.
Do you think, just throwing it out there, do you think digital currencies will eventually replace cash altogether? Or is that just a pipe dream?
Honestly, I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does.
Yeah.
But I think it's more likely that we'll see a mix of both, at least for the foreseeable future. Traditional currencies aren't going anywhere anytime soon, but digital currencies, I think they're going to play a bigger and bigger role in our lives, especially as the technology improves and regulations become clearer.
Okay. So we've got inflation. We've got the digital currency revolution. Now let's talk about the thing that probably keeps most of us up at night, the job market. Layoffs one day, hiring sprees the next. It's enough to make your head spin. What's going on here?
Well, there are a few big trends that are really shaking things up. Remote work, for one. That's changed the game for a lot of people. And then, automation is another big factor. Machines and algorithms are taking over tasks that used to be done by humans.
Right.
And then you have the rise of the gig economy, which is, it's a whole different way of working. So all of these things are kind of converging, and it's creating a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of opportunity.
Okay, but let's be real. For the average person out there who's maybe worried about their job or wondering what skills they need to learn to stay relevant, what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, don't panic. Change is scary, but it's also inevitable. The key is to be adaptable, to be willing to learn new things. One thing I always tell people is to think about the skills that are going to be in high demand in the future.
Okay, so, what? Give us some specifics.
Well, a labor economist we studied, a really smart guy, he predicts that things like data analysis, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, Those are going to be huge. If you can develop skills in those areas, you're going to be in a good position.
So upskilling, basically.
Totally.
Got it. Okay. Now, let's shift gears again and talk about global trade. I mean, it feels like every time I turn on the news, there's another trade war brewing or a supply chain meltdown happening somewhere. What's the deal with all this?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mess out there. Honestly, what we're seeing is a kind of fundamental shift in the way global trade works. I mean, for decades, companies were all about offshoring, right?
Yeah.
Moving production to countries where labor was cheaper.
Right.
But now things are changing. Labor costs in those countries are rising. There are geopolitical tensions, like you mentioned, trade wars, all that. And then there's the whole issue of supply chain resilience. The pandemic really exposed how fragile global supply chains can be.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So now companies are starting to rethink their strategies. We're seeing a trend towards what's called reshoring, which basically means bringing manufacturing back home.
Okay. And what's driving that? Is it just about like avoiding those supply chain disruptions, or is there more to it than that?
It's a combination of factors, really. I mean, yeah, supply chain resilience is a big one, but companies are also realizing that there are other advantages to manufacturing closer to home, like, quality control can be better. You can be more responsive to changes in customer demand. And then there's the whole PR aspect. The Made in America label can be a powerful selling point.
Okay. So reshoring is becoming a thing. What does that mean for the average person? Like, what should people be paying attention to?
Well, keep an eye on what's happening in your local community. Are there companies that are expanding their manufacturing operations? Are there new businesses popping up that are focused on domestic production? Those could be signs of opportunity, both in terms of jobs and investment.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Inflation, digital currencies, the changing job market, global trade. It's a lot to take in. But I think the main takeaway here is that the world is changing and fast. And if we want to not just survive but thrive in this new environment, we need to be informed, we need to be adaptable, and we need to be proactive.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Knowledge is power. The more you understand about these trends, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions for yourself, your family, your career.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about how we can actually do that. I mean, we've talked about upskilling, we've talked about paying attention to local business trends. What about investing? What should people be thinking about in this kind of volatile economic climate?
Well, first of all, diversification is key. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Explore different asset classes. Stocks, bonds, real estate. You might even consider alternative investments like cryptocurrencies. But, and this is important, do your research. Understand the risks involved. Emerging markets, for example, they can offer high potential returns, but they can also be very volatile.
Right.
So, yeah, diversification is key, but also risk management.
Okay, so we've covered investing. What about those in-demand skills we were talking about earlier? Data analysis, AI, cybersecurity. Any advice for people who are thinking about, maybe going back to school or taking some online courses to develop those skills?
There are so many resources available these days. Online learning platforms like Coursera, ADX, even LinkedIn Learning, they offer amazing programs in those areas. And a lot of them are very affordable, even free in some cases. So there's really no excuse not to learn.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the power of networking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Connect with people who are already working in those fields. Go to industry events, join online communities. You'd be surprised how willing people are to share their knowledge and experience.
Great advice. All right, so to wrap things up, it's clear that the global economy is in a state of constant flux. But the good news is, being informed is the first step to not just surviving, but thriving in this new world. So as you go about your day, think about this. If the global economy is a giant game of chess, what moves are you going to make to position yourself for success?
Love that analogy. And remember, the future isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we create.
That's a great point to end on. We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the complex forces that are shaping the global economy, and more importantly, empowered you to take control of your own economic future. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll see you next time.